We often talk about our experiences of having a baby, from our birthing plans to how helpful our other halves were, or not, in the delivery room. But today we're going to be talking about a different aspect of childbirth, which some women don't know about, and that's incontinence. Now, it affects nearly... Someone went, oh, yes. Well, it does. It affects nearly half of women after childbirth. So why are we so embarrassed to talk about it openly? I suppose it's not easy to talk about these things, is it? And also, it's about asking the questions before you start, isn't it? So I would imagine antenatal classes are probably where you should be given this information. Because, you know, I think most women suffer some kind of bladder control problems. You know what I mean? When trampolining and all... Oops! But when we're talking... You know the one. You know the one. But we're talking about women who it really seriously affects their lives, who become
I think even
very
that can
incontinent.
seriously affect... I think that we've learnt, and very much here, it's like you get a group of women together on a night out and they've all had babies, and every time we all laugh, everybody crosses their legs. And it's become something that we can laugh about up to that point. But I think that it can go a lot deeper than that. And I remember in my antenatal classes being in that pink cloud of, oh, I'm pregnant, and they would say this incontinence word and pelvic floor, and I thought I had this image that the only people that have incontinence are elderly people shuffling along. That's not the case. You know,
so they didn't tell you about it?
Yeah, but I didn't really kick it in enough. And the thing is, I didn't do my pelvic floor exercise, and I have suffered from, I don't want to say suffered, but dealt with incontinence. And it's deeply unsexy. Let's face it. I think that's why we don't talk about it. It took me ages, really. And when I think of all the things that we talk about as women and everything that I share with Mark, but I really didn't want to tell him that. Only in a jokey way. Oh, don't make... Oh, don't... I mean, do you remember when we did the trampolining here for you, when you were doing your exercise thing? Well, I wet myself live on air. You know, because... But actually, you don't... I mean, the thing is, I just thought that that was going to be my life now, that I'm going to... And it can change with your hormones and everything. Sometimes you can have weeks where it's much worse than other times.
But what are we saying? That we should be telling young women who are, you know, getting pregnant, going to their antenatal classes?
I think it would be really helpful.
Because you don't want to frighten people, do you?
No,
you don't
but
want
I
to be going,
think to properly
you know,
caution people.
Yeah, apparently 40% of people don't talk to a health professional about it, and that must be down to embarrassment, or maybe just thinking, oh well, there's nothing you can do about it.
But you can prevent it a bit, can't you? That's the thing, is, Janet.
Don't you think people need to have as much knowledge as possible when they get pregnant? And I was astounded this morning. I was looking at information about how many women go to antenatal classes and how many don't, and there's not a lot of information out there about that. But back in 2011, they found out that 3/4 of women from low-income groups never bothered to go to an antenatal class. And you just think, if that figure is true, that is absolutely
they're
scandalous.
Not getting that information.
And I want to say to women watching that if you're having a baby, you know, it's a big deal. You need to look after yourself and you need to soak up as much information as possible. And even during the brief period that I worked in the maternity unit in a hospital, I saw women coming in who had no idea. They just thought the baby would just kind of plop out.
And everything just goes
and everybody
back,
else would be in charge, and everything would be put back to its previous
And I think the thing is
body.
that, for me, I mean, I went to antenatal classes, the information is there, but maybe it's not being stressed quite enough to say, you know, seriously, if you don't do these pelvic floor exercises,
you see, I think it is. I just think, especially when you're younger, you just don't think it's going to happen to you. I was 23 when I had Shane, and they said all the time about pelvic floor, and, you know, and at 23 you're more worried about getting your stomach muscles back, not anything down there. And I never thought about it, and it didn't affect me. But then I had Kira, you know, I had Jake, and then I had Kira, my third baby, at 36. And, of course, it massively affected me then. But my thing then was, I've left it too late.
But I think, you know what?
It's never too late.
I think the other thing as well is when they talk about the pelvic floor and they talk about how it's good for, you know, your sex life afterwards as well. And I think the problem is when you're pregnant, you think, I'm never going to have sex. So you kind of switch off to it. But the thing is, because it's such a taboo and because young people think, well, that won't happen to me, it's so important as women that we do talk about it, because it's not, you don't have to accept it. Yeah. There's so many different things that you can do, and this is all the NHS tips. Things like lose weight, because if there's more pressure on your pelvic floor, you are more likely to have a weak pelvic floor. You know, drinking plenty of water. Do you know that so many women stop going out? They start to isolate themselves because they're so worried about where the toilets are. Yeah. So it's so that, you know, like for me, I do Pilates, I do trampolining, which I learnt to do here, thanks to you. I watch my caffeine intake, and you really can. It really can improve.
I don't do any of that, and that's why I weigh constantly.
And we did ask you at home, have you suffered from post-pregnancy incontinence? And 67% of you said yes. So let's talk about it. Tell all your young friends that that's something. Do your pelvic floor.
Not to be embarrassed.
We're doing them now.